Welcome to Blooming Wand, your home for grounded spiritual content. I'm Emily O'Neill, evidential psychic medium, intuitive healer, and coach. And on this episode, we're going to explore the theme that we are both the garden and gardener in our own lives. And I think of it as considering the sacred art of tending to ourselves. In the rhythm of seasons and cycles, I've been contemplating what it means to be both the gardener and the garden in our own lives, understanding that we are simultaneously the creator and the creation, the nurturer and the nurtured, the one who shapes and the one being shaped, not only by our environment, but by our own thoughts and actions, and oftentimes by forces much greater than ourselves. So, what's it mean to be the gardener in your own life? Well, to be the gardener in your life means claiming agency. It means showing up with tools in hand, ready to cultivate the soil, plant intentionally, weed consistently, prune with purpose, and water faithfully. So, what do I mean by cultivating the soil? Well, it means creating conditions conducive to growth through self-care, rest, nourishment, and habits that sustain rather than deplete. What do I mean by planting intentionally? I mean choosing carefully what seeds of thought, relationship, and endeavor you plant in the precious soil of your life. Now, weeding consistently means noticing and gently removing what no longer serves. And this may include limiting beliefs and relationships that drain rather than nourish, commitments that have outlived their season. You name it. There's lots of things that maybe we could adjust in our lives that just maybe we don't need to be tending to anymore or we don't want in our life anymore. We can also, as the gardener in our lives, prune with purpose. Sometimes growth requires cutting back, saying no, creating boundaries, or focusing energy where it matters most. And I like the idea of pruning. Maybe you want to cut back on how much you spend so that you can save money and channel that money into a trip that you've been dreaming of. That's an intentional thing that we do. Sometimes saying no is a form of pruning, just telling somebody when maybe they want you to do things you don't feel like doing, that's just not going to be possible for me. And I really like the idea of creating boundaries. And there are two things that I've already mentioned that I think I want to do deeper dives into in later episodes, and that's limiting beliefs and creating boundaries because it's something that comes up in conversation a lot. It definitely comes up in my podcasts a lot, the YouTube channel, newsletters. We talk about this all the time. It's 100% something that comes up in almost every single reading that I do, or just any of my mentoring. These are just big, big topics that I think eventually will deserve their own episode. So hang tight for that. And shifting back to the gardener's role, watering faithfully. This just means nurturing what matters through consistent attention, presence, and care, even when results are not immediately visible. I know that that's a big one for me. I tend to think, oh, nothing's happening because I don't immediately see results. And that mindset has not been helpful to me. It's been rather limiting. And I try to tell myself, I just can't see everything that's happening, and that's okay, and that growth happens over time. And I don't know how I became so impatient. I don't remember always being this way, but maybe I'm just learning more about myself. But I think that that's something that a lot of us struggle with is we have a hard time when results aren't immediately visible. Fair enough. We're human after all. So, what kind of wisdom does the garden offer the gardener? Or how can we relate to this aspect of the metaphor? So, to be the garden means embracing receptivity and surrender. It means honoring natural timing, welcoming all weather, accepting imperfection, celebrating diversity, and trusting the process. Well, honoring natural timing, this is a big one, and it's kind of something that again I've had a hard time with, but just as a garden can't be rushed, our own unfolding has its own inherent wisdom and pace. Even if we're struggling with that pace, we have to trust there must be some wisdom in this. And oftentimes there is. And here's what helped me as I thought of this phrase, how the rose doesn't criticize itself for not blooming in February. Because it's not supposed to bloom in February. It's supposed to bloom in later in spring. And so why be hard on yourself if something's not happening in a time where maybe it's not meant to? Now, leaning into welcoming all weather. Growth requires not just sunshine, but also rain and wind, and sometimes even the fallow periods of winter. Each condition brings its own gifts. Every season, all kinds of weather, whatever's going on, there's probably something to learn from it. I'm definitely not somebody that's going to lean into the everything happens for a reason, because when people tell me that when I'm having a hard time, it doesn't feel kind nor supportive. But I can, with time, come to my own conclusions about the gifts that my challenges have brought, if there are any. And I like that to be something I do for myself rather than having other people say, it'll pass. There's a reason for everything. I don't know that those platitudes are helpful. I bet you've had people say that to you just like I've had people say it to me, and it probably didn't feel very good. Now, accepting imperfection. A real garden isn't pristine. It's wild at the edges, it has bare patches, and it's home to both the planned and the unexpected. So too is it with our lives. Celebrating diversity. This is a big one. A thriving garden contains many forms of life that are coexisting. And just as our lives are richer when we embrace the varied aspects of ourselves, our gardens are richer when we embrace the various aspects that are going on within it. And this makes me think about how another analogy, this is going to be an analogy-filled episode, but I look around at my neighbors and they're all squirting their weeds, their quote weeds, their dandelions mostly with Roundup. And I'm like, no, those dandelions are really good for the soil. They rejuvenate the soil. Plus, they're edible. Like we can harvest them and eat them. And in addition to that, they're often some of the first things to bloom in plenty that the bees need and other insects. And so, I can't help but be slightly appalled when I see them squirting away at the dandelions, especially with Roundup, which, if you don't know, I'm going to tell you, don't use it. It's really bad for insects. It's really bad for the bees, and probably not that good for our waterways either. And we don't want to collapse any more beehives because the bees are declining. So just a heads up on that Roundup. Now, I do live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, and I know that it's a physical task to have to bend over and maybe pull weeds because we're actually really not allowed to have them. But I do artful tending where in the backyard where nobody can see anything, I let things be a little bit more wild than I do in the front yard. And if I need help getting some of that work done, I try to ask for help. And if I know my neighbors maybe physically can't do some of their yard work, we try to help each other out. So that feels like celebrating diversity to me. I don't know what you think, but that's something that I've seen. Now, the last one about the garden's wisdom is trusting the process. So, beneath the surface, even when nothing seems to be happening, roots are strengthening and life is preparing for its next expression. And I always feel this. I feel really sometimes scared in way early spring that nothing's going to happen in the garden, that nothing will grow because all I see is dirt and I don't see any sprouts yet. And then I have to remember that there's a lot going on underneath the surface that I cannot see. I can definitely feel it, but I can't always see it. And that anxiety kind of comes from the not knowing, and I'm working on learning to kind of embrace that more. I think that will be a lifelong practice for me, learning to be a little bit more patient and trust that even when I can't see that there's something happening, that something is happening. Now, how can we lean into the practice of being both the gardener and the garden? And how do we live in this paradox daily? Well, here are some practices that have helped me. Morning intentions, beginning each day consciously by choosing what you wish to cultivate. So for me, I lay in my bed for an extra 5 to 10 minutes after my alarm goes off, and I just feel the day. Like I feel the shape of the day. I kind of run through what appointments I have, where I need to be, and I check in with my body and I say, is this a slow moving day? Am I going to need to try to work in a little bit more rest? How do I want to feel? How do I actually feel? And for me, a theme or an intention that I've been working on is flow. So meeting the moment and adjusting my actions to the moment and to the need of that moment. And so that's something that I've been wishing to cultivate is flow. Another thing is evening reflection, ending with gentle acknowledgement of what bloomed in the day and what needs tending tomorrow. The way that I've been doing this in the evening is I walk around the yard and I look around and I take a deep breath and I look at the sky and I watch the hummingbirds and I just think about how did it go today, Em? It doesn't mean everything went well. It means lots of things, but I do feel like taking a deep breath and reflecting on the day has been a way for me to actually practice gratitude. Even if I've had a not great day, there are always things that I can find that I'm really grateful for, and they become these little special moments in my life. And it's taught me that life is frankly made up of these smaller, more intimate moments, sometimes with other people, oftentimes with myself, and how they really nourish and sustain me, little, small, special, sacred moments between me and spirit and nature and just life in general. Another thing I do are mindful pauses. And so throughout the day, I take a moment and I ask, am I being a harsh or a loving gardener right now? And what does this moment in my garden need? I'm not going to lie, sometimes I'm a harsh gardener. I'm like, what the heck? And I'm critical and I say, this isn't what I want, or this is not right, or this makes me angry, or I won't stand for this. And sometimes I'm really hard on myself. Um, but I really do want to be a loving gardener, not just for my own self, but to others. I volunteer in the local school system teaching kids to read, and they're very squirrely in the springtime. And I have 30 minutes to do a reading lesson, which is not very long when you have young ones that are going in all kinds of different directions. And I found myself being wanting to be kind of a harsh gardener, and then I realized they're just responding to the change in seasons, and I found ways to be a kinder gardener in that moment, not just to myself who was saying, you got to get this reading lesson done. You've got 30 minutes, but to the kids who I was also saying the same thing or wanting to say the same thing to them, but of course I didn't because that's not going to be helpful. Another thing we can do to practice being both the gardener and the garden in our life is seasonal rituals. And I talk about this all the time. It's honoring the natural transitions in your life with small ceremonies that mark endings and beginnings. I feel like midlife is full of beginnings and endings. I feel like all of our lives have them. They take all kinds of shapes and forms. You guys know I love the tarot. If you read tarot or engage with it, there are so many cards that represent beginnings and endings and the different ways that beginnings and endings can show up in our lives. Sometimes they're big, births and deaths and things like that. Sometimes a surgery can represent a beginning or an ending. I just had a hysterectomy. It's been a milestone moment in my life. There is a beginning that is on the brew from having this surgery, but there was also a really big ending, and it was a significant moment. And I have done a little ceremony for myself, and it started months before I ever had the surgery. I did some journaling and some meditation around it and created a plan of how I wanted to honor and tend this transition. Actually, over the course of several months, it began at the spring equinox, and I will sort of watch how I'm moving. My surgery was right at the spring equinox, that is, and I'm watching how I'm moving and changing now and marking it with each shift in the seasons from Beltane to summer solstice through into autumn and winter. And I know that that's a special thing to do, and people, the old and ancient ones in all of our lineages, marking special transitions in our lives was something that they would have definitely been doing. And things have changed. And for those of us that maybe aren't as tied to organized religion, we have to sort of craft those things ourselves. And I love doing that, frankly, and I just look to nature. That's how I craft my transitions or ceremonies, is always around what's happening in the natural world. And if you know me, you know that I believe very deeply that connecting with the land and nature and Mother Earth is a spiritual practice. It could be as simple as that. Community gardening is another way we can practice being both the garden and the gardener. We share, you can share your growth and your wisdom with others and welcome their insights in return, because no garden exists in isolation. And that's really what I'm trying to do here at Blooming Wand through the podcast, the YouTube channel, the newsletter, all these different things that I do, is create community where some wisdom can be shared. I might be publishing these things, but I'm certainly not the first one to say these things. It's old, ancient wisdom. It's just coming through me, little old Emily, but I didn't come up with any of this stuff. It's old. But I like to share it with you, and I love when you guys email me back or comment on videos and stuff like that and let me know how you're doing. It really is so awesome, and it makes me feel really connected, and it gives me lots of ideas. So, one of the things I also wanted to talk about is the lost connection, on this note of what I just said about ancient wisdom and how we can connect this ancient wisdom to modern times. And it came to me that for thousands of years, humans have been both gardeners and gardeners of their landscapes. This relationship was not one of domination, but of reciprocity. Indigenous cultures worldwide demonstrate this deep interrelationship with the natural world. There's so many examples of this. And in many traditions, humans and nature exist in reciprocal relationships characterized by gratitude, responsibility, and balanced exchange. Our connection to the land forms a bridge between the ancestors who understood nature's wisdom and the descendants who will inherit our choices. So, gardener, right? And the recent historical shift from kinship to exploitation has damaged both the Earth's living systems and our collective well-being. When we deny our reciprocal relationship with nature, we lose something within ourselves. And Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, who is a botanist and enrolled member of the Potawatomi Nation, explores this worldview in her influential book, which I said was Braiding Sweetgrass, and she weaves together scientific knowledge with indigenous wisdom, showing how plants and other living beings offer us gifts and lessons if we only remember how to listen. And Kimmerer challenges us to acknowledge and to celebrate our reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world, suggesting that only by hearing the languages of other beings can we truly understand the generosity of the earth and learn to give our own gifts in return. And this is the theme that it spoke to me so deeply, by hearing the language of other beings. How do we do that? I would argue it's with our intuition. She explains, we say that we know a thing when we know it not only with our physical senses, with our intellect, but also when we engage our intuitive ways of knowing, of emotional knowledge and spiritual knowledge. And this intuitive dimension is essential to developing a reciprocal relationship with both nature and ourselves. So we can be the gardener of our own life. We can be the gardener to the world. We can be tending to ourselves and tending to something bigger. And so this metaphor of gardener and garden within our own lives can apply to us, but we can also apply it to how we act with the greater, wider world. And that's sort of this third layer that I wanted to add into this discussion or this conversation. So I feel like intuition is the bridge between our inner and outer gardens. So intuition serves as the bridge between the gardener and the garden. It is how we listen beyond words, practice quiet observation and non-attachment, create space for wisdom to just naturally pop up. Sometimes we just need to wait for it to come. It'll come. So what does it mean to listen beyond words? It means attuning to the subtle communication of plants and animals and landscapes, and this is something that I've been leaning into, and I have to say, wow, I mean, there's always more to lean into in terms of the subtle communication that I feel when I'm in nature, and it's very fulfilling. It's a very fulfilling practice. Now, listening beyond words also means recognizing patterns and relationships that analytical thinking alone might miss. It means feeling rather than just observing the rhythms and needs of both natural ecosystems and our inner landscapes. So, feeling rather than just observing. So, combining those two things. And we can look and look and look with our eyes, but what are your other senses doing when you're out in nature or in the wider world? Pay attention to those as well if you're able to. Now, practicing quiet observation with non attachment. This means cultivating the ability to observe without immediately categorizing or judging. It means engaging fully with present moment experiences without judgment or distraction, allowing us to open ourselves to the richness of our surroundings. And these are, I put in quotes because this is what Robin Wall Kimmerer said in her book. It's noticing how we quickly label things, label experiences as good or bad, and practice just witnessing without attachment. It's so easy to go good, bad, good, bad. I know I do it every morning when I read the local newspaper. I'm like, this is not good, and I have to really step back and say, maybe so, maybe not. And do I need to get involved? Or do I need to get involved now? When's the right time for that? But my binary thinking around good or bad has often led me a little bit astray. The other thing we can do is let go of the need to control outcomes. Yikes, right? You're looking at a top tier control freak here. And so letting go of the need to control outcomes is something I'm always, it's going to be a lifelong thing for me. And I have to do this both in nature and in my inner work. So I do try to control or have control over what's happening in the garden. And sometimes I force things. It's like that plant is not going to grow there, Emily. You need to move it. But it'll look. I need to fill this space. It'll look good if it grows there, and then it doesn't grow, and I'm upset about it. It's like it's not going to work. So what are you going to do? You need to go with the flow and ask the plant where it wants to be planted. And you know what? Plants do let me know, and they'll definitely let you know when they're not happy with what you're doing with them. Now, what does it mean to create space for wisdom to emerge? It means recognizing that when we stop trying to react to our experiences, you can open up to it in a completely new way and rest in the mindful presence of what's occurring. It means allowing periods of silence and stillness where deeper knowledge can surface. It means practicing patience. Wisdom from both the land and our deeper selves rarely emerges on demand. It means trusting the meaningful patterns and insights. They will appear, and we just need to create the right conditions for them to do so, and oftentimes rushing around or stressing out or controlling are not the right conditions. Now, when intuition guides our gardening, we begin to recognize patterns that might otherwise remain invisible. We might sense when a plant needs water before visible signs of wilting appear. Or we might feel drawn to sit beneath a particular tree exactly when our spirit needs that specific medicine. Similarly, we might intuitively know which parts of our inner landscape need attention before they manifest as more serious imbalances. Indigenous traditions have always valued this intuitive knowledge as equal to and complementary with more analytical ways of knowing. In our modern context, reclaiming intuition helps us weave together what has been artificially separated, mind and heart, science and spirit, human and nature. When we approach both outer and inner landscapes with non-judgment and quiet observation, we create the conditions for reciprocal healing to occur naturally. And here's my final thought. Perhaps the greatest wisdom in being both gardener and garden is learning when to do and when to be, when to act and when to allow, when to shape and when to surrender. In this balance lies not just growth, but grace. and the understanding that we are always both working on ourselves and being worked on by forces that are larger than us. The garden teaches the gardener as much as the gardener tends to the garden. What part of your garden needs tending today? And what part of you is ready to unfurl precisely in its own perfect timing? Do share. You know I love to hear from you. And in closing, I wanted to write a poem that came to me as I was crafting this episode. I jotted it down. I've posted it in a couple of places, but I wanted to share it with you here. It's called Unfurling, and here we go. In this season of tender unfurling, I am the gardener and the garden, tending to dreams planted in winter's quiet, nourishing roots that anchor me to what matters. Like the cherry blossoms that don't question their becoming, I am learning to trust my own timing. In the small moments, I feel my soul stretch and bloom. Morning light on green grass, bird song signaling sunrise, fingers deep in soil, the fleet feet of time, rolling ever onwards, holding it all close, just to let it all go. Each tiny awakening, a petal slowly opening, we are all gardens in various stages of bloom, growing precisely as we should, at exactly the pace we need. Well, that's the end of this episode, friends. Don't forget to get your journals out. Maybe think about some of the themes that we've talked about in this episode. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. Don't forget, you can find me at bloomingwand.com. If you want to shoot me an email for any reason, it's emily@bloomingwand.com. See you soon.